I want you to turn with me, everyone, to Exodus chapter 3. Exodus chapter 3. It's a familiar passage, but I want you to hear it in a unique context today. Exodus 3, verse 1. One day while Moses was taking care of the sheep, reading from the Good News Translation, everyone, and the goats of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, he led the flock across the desert and came to Sinai, the holy mountain. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him as a flame coming from the middle of a bush. Moses saw the bush on fire, but was not burning up. Here's verse 10. Now I'm sending you to the king of Egypt so that you can lead my people out of his country. I want to simply say, you are chosen. You can put that in the thread. Young people, you are chosen. God is the greatest of all instigators. What I mean by that is God is the greatest of all forces, entity, persons, or authorities that will stir up people to achieve their greatest purpose. God is the greatest instigator. Despite the desire of many of us to hide and to live inconspicuous, God lovingly intrudes, instigating or creating or initiating encounters that are designed to bring us into a greater place of intimate understanding as to why we were created. And here's what's amazing. You ready? And God does this while we are coexisting with clarity and contradictions. God and only God can discover us hiding, muted by fear and paralyzed by human failure. And regardless of our unuttered inclination to simply be without being required or demanded upon, the infinite intellect invites us into, you ready? Purpose. Put that in the thread. God has a purpose for you. Do not be deceived. Do not think that at your age and at your stage that God doesn't have a purpose for your life. In essence, God chooses us. Yes, God chooses us. Not systems, not structures, not people. God chooses us. And God can use them to make us aware of being chosen, but ultimately, God chooses us. See, to be chosen is about more than being selected from the crowd. It's a process of emerging discovery. Wow. An internal reconstruction of our awareness of who we are. It's about an emerging discovery where God graces you with what is needed to execute with integrity your unique assignment in the world. It's where the inexhaustible love of God and the incomparable mercy of Jesus Christ is extended to you while you, in your conscious evolution, experiences the extraordinary revelation of God as your source and your sustainability. By source, I mean everything needed, including relationships that are necessary for you to become the full expression of divine identity is given to you. This requires process. Process is big for me because process is the meticulous design of the eternal to navigate you through the maze of the uncertainties of life to a place of confidence in God through Jesus Christ. All of this occurs while enduring trauma that results from a simple, naive yes. As you look at your life right now, my young brothers and sisters, with all that's going on in culture and in community, as you look at the fact that there are some real challenges that's causing trauma, still dealing with the pandemic, still dealing with the uncertainty of how this country will turn politically, still dealing with economic realities that appear to be working against particularly people of color, still dealing with policing and all that comes with it, still dealing with this awkwardness of being a woman or a man built and based in skin and positioned in earth to produce purpose while people are judging you based upon sexuality or based upon gender or based upon race or based upon class. And you have to thrive in the midst of people judging you based upon their own narrow, narcissistic, demonic tendencies. It is yet in the midst of all of that that God still says, I need a yes from you. This yes, though spoken in immaturity, becomes the conduit to an amazing journey guided by the unthinkable and governed by the undeniable. This initial yes is not the problem. Rather, it is what emerges from it. It is when you discover, experience, and yes, must endure the creative tension that's assigned to you discovering who you are. This tension, when managed appropriately, deepens our dependency on God, causing us to pray, causing us through prayer to exclaim our insatiable need for God through a transparent, transforming relationship with Jesus Christ. Let me note that our relationship with Jesus is not just about personal salvation, my brothers and sisters. Rather, it's about us becoming whole. Yes. Becoming whole, becoming complete. And while being complete and whole, we become lights in a dark, depraved world. Yes, lights within our black skin, lights in our gender, lights from wherever we've come from in this country, lights. We are the lights of the world. We are shining brightly in the darkness of the world with your courage to live, your courage to protest, your courage to be a voice of strength, your courage to expose what are the inconsistencies, incongruencies, yes, the evilness of this world. You are a light in a dark world. Thus, it's about serving others and expressing the marvelous love of Jesus Christ, who on the cross made the ultimate sacrifice. Here's the other thing. Being chosen is not just about one yes, but it's about saying yes continually as you live out through the power of the Holy Spirit, walking out the things that you've been uniquely created to. It's our willingness then to stay open to God, who through process develops in us something amazing. You ready? A transformed you. All of this begins, however, with an encounter instigated by a loving God, a God who gives you a reason to live. The Bible is filled then with all of these examples of transforming encounters. But one of the greatest examples to me, one of the most intriguing, was the example of Moses. Moses reminds us of us in many ways. Notice the pre-existing conditions that Moses embodied before this encounter with God. He had a checkered past, an obvious liability, serious self-esteem issues, and yet God still calls him. Don't miss this. He has a checkered past, obvious liability, serious self-esteem issues, and yet God still extends the call. What then is discovered through this encounter with God, which is initiated for the calling of Moses to purpose? Here's the first thing. You ready? This is going to bless some of you. God chooses you based upon the purity of his purpose, not the perplexity of your past. Don't miss this. God chooses you based upon the purity of his purpose, not the perplexity of his past. Notice who this man is. He's born Hebrew, raised Egyptian, yet exposed to the culture of Midian. In essence, he was born a slave, raised as royalty, sheltered by a polytheistic people. The failure that we see recorded in chapter 2 of Exodus in verse 12 is the result of this unbearable tension of multiple cultures. He kills a man not because he's a violent man, but because he's a man working out of his own tension, his own stress, and his own inconsistencies. And yet, despite all of this, God calls him. I need you to get this. In chapter 3, verse 10, God ensures that this man, with all of this stuff that's going on, will be okay. I need you to get this. You will never be called to do the work of God as a pure person. You will come with so many different things swirling around in your head. You will come with broken relationships. You will come with an uncertainty about sexuality. You will come dealing with yourself in some awkward places. You will come with a wounded heart. You will come sometimes angry. You will come with all of these things swirling around in you. But can I encourage you and tell you that God still chooses you even when there is things working in you that causes you to be perplexed. And it's because of God's purpose for you and because of the purity of God's love for you. Do not disqualify yourself because you are not perfect, but understand that your imperfections will not block the call of God. Here's the second thing. The second thing is that God calls you. He initiates these encounters because embodied in being chosen is an intense conflict between exposed fears and an evolving faith. He was dealing with some real serious stuff, some real fears. First fear is the fear of inadequacy. Chapter 3, here he has this amazing inadequacy. Here it is. But Moses said to God, I'm a nobody. How can I go to the king and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Fear of inadequacy. I'm not good enough. Fear of rejection. Chapter 4, verse 1. Then Moses answered the Lord, but suppose the Israelites do not believe me, will not listen to what I say. What shall I do if they say that you did not appear to me? Fear of rejection. Chapter 4, verse 10, the fear of humiliation. But Moses said, no, Lord, don't send me. I've never been a good speaker. I haven't become one since you begun to speak to me. I'm a poor speaker, slow and hesitant. Notice, every time there was a fear, God responded. God's response is the reassurance of his presence. Faith conquers these fears, and they result from two things. One, right relationship and right response. The Lord loves us enough that the Lord will give us the courage to rise above our fears. Rise above what we think makes us inadequate. Rise above what we believe makes us incapable. I need some of you to get this today, that you are capable because God has put his hand on you. You are capable because God has called you. You are capable because God called you to this place. You must see yourself then as someone who is uniquely, wonderfully made. And even with your fears of inadequacy, fears of rejection, fears of humiliation, whatever those fears are, God will give you the ability. And so the way you conquer these fears is through the courage of obedience, which comes from the power of faith. Here's the final thing, and then I'm done. God, in choosing you and creating these encounters, God creates you capable, not just active. Can I encourage you with something amazing? God creates you capable, not just active. What does that really mean? That means that God will marry a previous skill with a present season to produce a future success. Woo! Let's try it again. God will marry a previous skill with a present season to produce a future success. Chapter 4 and verse 2 says, so the Lord asked him, what are you holding? And he said, a stick. Let's try it again. So the Lord asked him, what are you holding? And he said, a stick. God shows us something amazing. Do not be discouraged by what you think you lack. But look at your life and understand that God has given you what you need. Whether you're an 18-year-old freshman or you're a 21-year-old senior, whether you're someone who's presently in the late afternoon of your life and you're starting something new in terms of Ed Waters, or you're someone who has made a decision that you're going to try something fresh. Here's what I want you to understand. God creates you with the capacity to do it. So it's not just about being active and busy. It's about producing purpose because of capacity. I close with this. Jesus Christ shows us that this a wonderful and amazing God will prove to you who you are and will provide for you what you need. In the Garden of Gethsemane, God says to Jesus, I will give you everything you need to face the cross. And so when Jesus says, but not my will, thy will be done, in the affirmation of God, we see the strength of God's assurance that all things work together for good. So he faces the cross because the cross can be defeated if he does not fear it. And here's, as I close to you today, my brothers and sisters, my young brothers and sisters, my amazing young brothers and sisters, when you face the worst, God will give you the best. When you face the worst, God will give you the best. When you face the worst, God will give you the best that he has, because at the end of the day, God will always allow those that have been chosen to rise to greater heights if we do not flinch and become intimidated. So hold up your head, be encouraged, go forth into your future, trust that the hand of God is upon you, deal with your fears, understanding that fears can be conquered through faith and obedience, and finally, don't let what you are at the present discourage you from what you will be in the future. I close with this simple story. I am a man that God has taken from places of great fear and inadequacies to places that are beyond what he ever thought he could be. I'm a stutterer, and God never fixed my stuttering, but he never let my stuttering fix me, control me. You are capable of great things, and if you will only understand that. So in the name of the Lord Jesus, I pray for you now that you will be strengthened to trust who you are, to embrace your being chosen, and to walk out the purpose and plan of God. Thank you, Pastor Cheatham, for letting me share. Be blessed, my young brothers and sisters. Be blessed, Ed Waters University. And remember, you are chosen to be amazing and to be incredible.